It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Hello, Rye. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about UFOs or what is it, UAPs, aliens, the whole thing. We're committed, right? We're all in. My big question is why, right? Why is all this coming out? I mean, I know it's been over the last couple of years, not in the last week or two, but why are we now a little more open when our government has been always like so hush hush?
Yeah.
So you go back like way back, right? 1896, they saw airships over California. That's kind of crazy. I mean, that's you because then it's a big deal, right?
Right. There's not a
you're
whole lot
like,
of stuff flying around up there.
right. 1947, Roswell, right? Obviously a big, you think aliens, you think of Roswell. In Phoenix in 97, over 1,000 people saw this like big V-shaped lights up in the sky. The mayor was there. And he denied it at first. And then later he's like, oh, yeah, no, I saw it. So he's kind of a douchey liar, but you know how it is.
But you know,
2004, we had the Tic Tac incident, right? Where the Navy had. Now, like, so all that time we'd been like, no, there's nothing here. You guys are just stupid. You all imagined it. Mass hallucination. It was the way the horizon and the lights were glimmering off my car, and who knows? You were all just dumb. And then it all started to turn like around 2017. The New York Times put a big article out and they were like, we keep ignoring it and we're worried about the safety of like pilots and things like that. We keep pretending there's nothing there, but there's shit flying around everywhere. Harvard, right around then, got on board and created the Galileo project, where they actually started, talking to. They created a study group to study UAPs. 2020, the Navy released those 3 videos from the fighters. That was a big thing. And then we started having the hearings. Now, the hearings didn't really lead to much, and we're going to talk about that. But they said, "Oh, now we're going to have transparency and accountability." Um, Remember there was so that was let's talk about that for a minute. Transparency and accountability. So all this time, right? We had, what did they have? I think 4 different hearings between 22 and 23 about UAPs.
yeah.
All of them, they were like, oh, we're going to release stuff. We're going to, no more secrets. We're going to have it come out. Trump was going to expose it. Hillary was like, if you elect me, I'm going to expose it. We're going to get all this stuff. And basically, all we got from all those hearings was, well, the there are things out there that we don't know. We're not sure what they were. That was the only official acknowledgement from the government.
Right.
Now, you're going to tell me about that David Grutch guy, but from the government, from an official stance, all we got was, yeah, there's things we don't know what they are. That's so that's kind of shady. What do you?
Yeah.
What's your take on
Well,
that?
do you remember that right before the election, we did a show on all the drones or whatever it was flying over New Jersey and Virginia. And Trump was like, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is when I get elected.
And then he was like, oh, it's just drones.
Yeah, just drones. It's fine. I saw some pictures of some weird stuff, dude, and you're telling me that it's drones, then the government has some weird shit. So what if this is all like a big shell game? You know what I mean? What if this is all like a big, oh yeah, maybe there are aliens. We don't know what it is. And it's just like high-tech new, government weapons.
Yeah.
And they're just, I mean, is it possible that our government would lie to us?
No, Kevin, come on. I mean, that's it. Were they out there looking for something? Yeah, I don't know. So, well, that's one of the things, like where this whole trust comes into play. So, let's go back to that. Well, let's talk about so France, China, Russia, a lot of countries in Africa, all have had programs where they're studying UFOs and unexplained aerial phenomena. They haven't necessarily been like, oh, there's aliens or whatever, but
Hmm.
there's weird shit going on that doesn't make any sense, and they haven't been like playing with people. And
Hmm.
that's wonder like why is our government, hey, let's just mess with you. Now, 2023, we had that David Grush testimony, and he testified. He said crazy things. Like he said that he called them non human biologics,
Right.
would know these as aliens, right? And that we had secret programs to reverse engineer UFOs and like
Hmm.
doing things. He came out and was like, "Oh, all this stuff." Now I don't know if you guys remember him. He's the one who came like before Congress and was like, "Yeah, look, I'm going to come clean cuz nobody else is." And
Right.
that's but yeah, he had credibility. He was a former intelligence officer, but and he worked for a lot of different companies throughout, in the Department of Defense and like that, and with NASA and all kinds of stuff.
Right. He's legitimate high ranking
Yes.
intelligence
And he had access
officer.
to this information,
Right.
but it was weird that he's like all on his own. Like everybody else is like, we don't know you, buddy. And
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, they did try and do like a bit of discrediting of him. Like his military medical records were leaked.
yeah,
By
that's right.
who? Like, for what reason? Why would anyone do that? Like, you're risking your entire career if you do something like that. So why did
Right.
they do it?
It's weird because the VA, like, they'll just drop your shit anywhere. Oh, we left a laptop with everybody's information just
Right. Everybody's social security
I
number
was
and
at the
name.
coffee shop, I got distracted, there was a pretty girl,
Hmm.
and I just left my laptop there, and yeah, the password was already entered, and it was just open, or maybe the password was the word password,
Hmm.
it's one of
Right.
those.
Yeah.
I think that when I was in the military, so it's a million years ago, and they were like, 80% of all government passwords are the word password.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this was back like 2000, 2001,
Yeah. If
you know,
that
so
doesn't work, try admin or administrator, and
yep.
it'll get right through.
Right through, because that's the secret code,
Hmm.
there's a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4, we do that, but
Yep. Yep.
I don't so, I mean, that's the thing, like, it's weird that I'd have to go back to how much science has been hurt because we choose to ignore this stuff. Like, could we have learned a lot of cool things? Like, now, I one of the ones that comes to mind is like Tesla, right?
Right.
He he talked about uh what did he say? Like he used uh communications that were out of this world and
Hmm.
from extraordinary sources, and I think he didn't want to be perceived as crazy. Well, he was perceived as crazy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. He
I
definitely
gotta
was,
say,
and he was insane. But
results
yeah,
talk.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, he was obviously came up with a lot of stuff that we're still like inventing today that are like kind of still catching up with stuff that he was doing then, you
Yeah.
know?
Like Roswell was in 47, and supposedly, you watch like all the conspiracy videos and things on UFOs, and they say that a lot of the information from reverse engineering that crash was like leaked out, and that's where like they say that transistors came from.
Mhm.
A lot of different like circuit stuff, pretty much the whole circuit board thing came from the 47 Roswell thing, and, like, supposedly our government and, like, DARPA type things. I don't think DARPA was around then in that
Mhm. In that
form,
form.
but
Right.
those type of people, um, were leaking the stuff to, like, Bell Labs and all these things to make America progress is kind of the theory, right?
Mhm.
Is what they they hint at. Now, there have been some crazy things. Like, do you remember that? What? How do you even say it, Kevin? Umamu or
Yeah, I
what
don't
was the
I don't
big
I'm not even gonna try and say the
that
name of
that
that
big
that
stone? I think it.
cigar-shaped.
Yeah, that big like
Right,
rock.
so that was an
Little
interstellar object, right? That came from outside of this solar system and left off to in a different direction, after it picked up speed from the sun.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know if it was picking up speed based on gravity alone. Other people said that that was not the case, that there was some other whatever, dude. I don't
outside
understand
forces,
that
right?
stuff.
They were
Yeah. I
changing,
mean,
like, and they also like I read all kinds of things of as it gets closer to the sun and the warmer air, the gas changes and it changes speed and like there was all kinds of. I guess there was another video. I was looking for that one, and there was one I didn't even remember that was they showed some like big black spot in front of the sun, and then it looked like it was powering up from the
right,
sun.
sucking up energy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
that was
saw it
a
sucking
wild
up
video
the
clip.
energy, and they were
Yeah,
like, "Oh, no, that just happens. It
that's
just
just
kind of, like,
normal.
burps
Right.
out stuff,"
And I'm
and
not a physicist. I don't know. That shit looks wild to me, though.
right. That's one of those things you wanna ask those smart guys. Who is it, the I don't know, the guys that are always on Joe Rogan?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who I asked.
Uh-oh. Who'd you ask?
Well, last night I went and saw Giorgio Tsoukalos. You know who
Now
I'm talking about?
he's
He's
from the History Channel. He's the
he's
crazy hair
he's the
guy.
crazy dude with the ancient from the ancient aliens, right? With
Yeah,
the tan and the hair that's like 6 inches sticking straight off his head. Well, he
yeah,
gave a
tell me.
talk last night recently, and or talk last night, and I
Yeah,
got to go over there and listen to his crazy ass, and he was definitely talking about the um all sorts of stuff. Now he was saying that he thinks that the government isn't releasing any of this information intentionally. He thinks that this stuff is like getting out
okay, and then
despite
they're
the
trying
government's
to
efforts.
damage control.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
yes.
feel like there's gotta be more that you got out of this,
Well,
this evening with
there are
crazy.
three guys, there were four guys there, and it was a lot of crazy conspiracy stuff. It was all they do the ancient stuff, so it was all about pyramids
Okay,
and all that stuff. But then they got into at the end they got into a little bit about all the newer stuff that's coming out, and
nice.
they had a bunch of videos about a bunch of videos of different you know, encounters that were recorded. Then Navy videos that got out
Yeah.
that were, I mean, it didn't get out; they were released. It was crazy. These guys are all out of their fucking minds, and it kind of discredits the whole thing just because they're so insane. But
That's one of the things. Yeah, like I like this show, The Y Files, right?
yeah,
And that guy's got a YouTube channel. He does like deep dives in everything, and he's really pretty cool. And he like inspires me to research all kinds of stuff and go into crazy
yeah,
town and whatever. But and also if I'm searching out something, he's usually got it. But the whole thing is his show. He has like a little fish bowl with a like fake fish that
yeah,
talks
uh huh,
and they call it hecklefish,
hmm,
and the thing is, he's like, "Yeah, I have that here because otherwise, if I don't act like I'm a little bit crazy,
yeah,
the government's gonna come after me, and I don't wanna get shot for exposing stuff." Whereas if you're like, "Oh, no, it's tinfoil hat, it's
right.
crazy,"
It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
then you
Well, I
don't need
mean,
to worry.
there's a lot of stuff on the Wi files that are like stretch credulity, but he seems to be like open about like that fact that it is a little bit
Right,
crazy.
right.
But I mean, he's putting out a lot of videos, man. So there's a lot of fun stuff there.
A lot of stuff.
It is one of my favorite YouTube channels.
And yeah, no, I enjoy it. Anyway, so there's a bunch of, like, reasons why you should be terrified of UFOs. And one of the things is, so there was an article, well, there were a couple. So there was an article on the Jerusalem Post that had UFOs once took control of Russian ICBMs. Now, you can look up this article, like, I just snatched it up. It's from 2023, August 1st, 2023. Um, but basically, they had a colonel that they're quoting, and he talks about how a ship hovered over a, nuclear missile facility, or ICBM facility,
Mhm.
and, uh, and basically activated all the missiles where they started to be brought up, entered the launch codes, everything. They were like freaking out, like, "Hey, we're not doing this." And then it all just stopped and the ship took off and everything went back to normal.
Mhm.
And people kind of took that as the aliens were showing us who's in charge.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a creepy idea. Um, in 1967, at Maelstrom Air Force Base, 10 they said ICMs. Now, that's intercontinental missiles, but is
Yeah.
that not ballistic? Like, I don't know why the B is not there. Did the guy writing the article not? I don't know. But became disabled at the same time the base was reporting they had like red lights and something hovering over
Over
the
top of it.
base.
Right.
So they had that going on. You can search that out. That's definitely all over the internet. In 76, an Iranian pilot tried to actually shoot down a UFO and like engaged it. And when he did, everything in his plane, the controls just stopped responding. Like,
Mhm.
it didn't shut it down where he crashed or anything,
Right.
but they just nothing worked or did anything and it just maintained. Like, basically, once again, it was kind of like they were in control,
Mhm.
you know? And so in the past, you're always like, nobody reports stuff because you get reported as like, oh, well, that guy's crazy, or
Yeah.
you actually lose your job, right? If
Right.
you come forward. um they even like shut down American Airlines pilots and things just for being like, yeah, I saw one. And I mean, things like that, right? You need to be careful about what you say. Why why the fear, Kevin? Do you have any theories of
I
why the government would shut this down?
Yeah, I think that they've been pushing this conspiracy theory crazy bullshit
Mhm.
for a long time. And I think it started with a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Area 51. You know, people were going out there and recording things and like trying to sneak in and all sorts of stuff. It became like a big public event, you know what I mean? The secret
Right.
military base. And I think that they were using that area to test aircraft,
I
you
think
know?
all day. But were they
And they
testing
were
s
like, "Yeah, no, UFOs. It was UFOs." And they were spreading that shit secretly, but then, coming up with that phrase conspiracy theorist and like, making it out that only crazy people believe in aliens. If you saw an alien while you were flying an aircraft, that means you're insane and you shouldn't be in charge of flying aircrafts anymore. I
exactly.
think they were kind of pushing this as a way to discredit people. And I mean, you can discredit people all you want, but you know, when everybody's seeing them over the East Coast, you can't just discredit every single person that saw it, you
Yeah,
know? When
yeah,
everybody sees them, you know, unless everybody is insane except for the people that are trying to cover things up, then seems a little weird.
right, right. No, it's I don't know, it's hard 'cause and kind of the flip side, like you hinted at, well, maybe the government, it's just kinda getting away from them now, and this is like damage control.
Right.
But if we look at it from the other side, like, they are starting to slowly release it, like, maybe you look at it like it's been too hard. W We've been covering it up so long, if we want it to get out now, we have to kinda do it slowly or it gets too weird. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, you can't do a complete 180. Like, to me, it's still pretty open compared to how we've been. Things are pretty open, right? Like, how did those Navy files get out? I don't even
Right.
understand the 3 Navy videos.
I mean, they released them.
I
So
know,
I don't understand why they would,
right.
you know?
Unless you were trying to get at something.
Right.
So, at the time they were like, "Oh, maybe it was Hunter's laptop." They just needed a big story, like,
Yeah.
"Do something. I don't care. Aliens, whatever." Joe probably was like, "Just do something. I don't care." And they were like, "All right, he said aliens. Let's
Mhm.
do it." and they went in and, I mean, that could be. Now, what if aliens have been working with our government or even possibly telling our government what to do behind the scenes? And they're kind of like, all right, it's starting to get away from us. We're going to have to like ease people into this so there's not. They always say there'd be mass panic. If we knew about aliens, there'd be mass panic.
Right. But if there's all this stuff that came out
Yeah.
and everyone's like, yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, whatever.
Who cares? Nobody,
TikTok,
nobody
have you
even,
seen this girl
nobody
jump
even
up
paid
and
attention.
down, and yeah,
Yeah.
I don't need aliens,
Yeah. No.
We got yeah, I don't think there would be the mass panic, unless I mean, what do you think would happen? Like Independence Day or movies like that, if like a big ship or even way back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that
Right.
big ship hovered over the mountain,
Yeah.
or Independence Day, something hovered over the Pentagon or the
The
White
day the
House,
earth
it
stood
was.
still.
Right,
Yeah.
any of those. If a ship showed up and nothing happened and it just stayed there, what would people do? Would they care?
I think there'd be like a lot of news stories and stuff about it.
And
And
then we'd get
then,
tired of it. If
yeah,
it went on more
24
than
hours,
3
dude. It would
days,
be
you'd
different
be
things.
like,
Trump said
"Whatever."
something crazy, like, whatever. A million other things happen. And people just move on to the next thing. It's no big deal anymore. I mean, we see shit videos of stuff in the sky all the time. And
Mhm.
everyone's like, yeah, okay, I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So it's more and more you think we've kinda just accepted it, and now there was another theory. There's a book that came out, um in 2023, so not that long ago. Serge Monast, the guy's a Canadian investigative journalist. So right
Mhm.
there, you kind of discredit him a little
Right.
bit.
Yep.
Like if they didn't lose you at Canadian, they lost you at investigative journalist. It could go either way. Um, but so this guy, he's got a book. You can buy it on Amazon. It's out there, and it's called The Blue Beam Project. All right,
Hmm.
and they basically he postures four different like stages of how things will play out as far as like aliens. All right,
Hmm. Right.
and his theory is that it's kind of like a CIA cover story kind of thing, like it's not even really aliens. So work with me here. So basically, a new age religion, this is what his book postures, is the very foundation of the new world government, without which the dictatorships of the new world is completely impossible. So what's going to happen is Project Blue Beam Project is what he calls it. And it has four steps. So I don't want to get them wrong. So I'm going to read them. I know it's a little crazy, but they're pretty crazy. So they'll keep you guessing. A reevaluation of archaeological knowledge. Basically, he suggests that things like HARP and things like that would cause earthquakes.
Hmm.
And then artifacts are just going to pop up and like,
Okay.
oh, look, it turns out we were wrong about religion the whole time.
Hmm.
Right? So that way they can kind of shape it into whatever they want it to be. So that's phase one. Phase two, a great space show with three-dimensional optical holograms. And this could be either like a big projection of God in the sky or some kind of thing that we believe like aliens, kind of like
Hmm.
whatever. And they were talking about craziness. Like he goes deep into it could be like Christian people will see Jesus and Muslims will see Muhammad, and everybody
Right.
sees what they want to see, right? And and then kind of like merge them all into one. Then two-way phase 3, two-way electronic telepathic communication. So this is like why we needed all the 5G antennas set up
Hmm.
around, because that's the one that like the frequency is pretty close to your brain waves and they can direct beam thoughts right into your head, so it'd be like you're hearing from God directly, Kevin.
I like it.
This is where your tinfoil hat
It
might
actually
actually
comes
be a
into
good
effect.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Might be
where you're
time.
like, I should have been wearing the foil hat and then I wouldn't hear this crazy stuff. All right, And then 4, supernatural manifestations by electronic means, tricking mankind to believe that a UFO invasion is coming, spreading high frequency waves over the earth in abundance, putting integrated chips on every individual. And that's how they bring kind of the new world order, right?
Hmm.
That's how it all happens. So that's, hey, that's an option. Now,
That's the best theory I've heard so far.
all right. So the Y files kind of thing, the guy dug into that one and he talked about it. And his theory at the end was like, well, there also was like a Star Trek episode that was like exactly that same plot that
Hmm.
came out before this guy's book.
Right.
So, but hey, just because it's out there, does that mean it's not true?
It's in the zeitgeist now, man.
Exactly.
It's
Once
out
it's
there.
there, just because you think they're after you or out to get you, Kevin, it doesn't mean they're not. They're
Hmm.
always watching. Um, Now, I don't know. I mean, what's your take on that? I have one more theory that I
Well,
want to go down,
let's
but
talk about like
yeah.
investigating. Like maybe they're getting involved with this. The government is, because this means that there's actual potential threats. Like there's actual, like an actual danger to uh aircraft, to people. We had talked about the nuclear weapons, but I
Yeah,
mean there's been a lot of speculation and talk about them showing up around nuclear power plants and missile
right.
silos and things like that, deactivating missiles and things like that. But I mean, it seems to me that if that was actually the case and these things were actually happening, you'd want to look into it, right? If you don't know why it's happening,
Are you really protecting
but
us if you don't dig to the bottom of it?
you know what I'm saying? Are you
That's
really
not
doing
true.
anything? But I mean, also at the same time, like Edward Snowden came out and warned us that the government was spying on us, and they're like, "No, prison, get him, kill him." And Julian Assange came out, and he was in prison for 5 years. Like maybe it's better to just everybody shuts the fuck up and just listen to your government. Otherwise, you're going to be in prison, and don't look into any of this stuff any further.
Right.
Stay
And
in your
that's
lane.
the thing is like eventually it gets out of your control, right? Like
Right.
what if it gets too far away from you
And
where
I've heard 10, 20 different people that have come out and said like wild stuff. Like
Mhm.
this is coming out because this is like gonna come out whether the government lets it out or not.
Right.
Like, and I heard it, by 2023, February 2023, all this information is going to come out. And then it was 2024. And now it's 2025, all this information is going to come out. But they
Because the
keep
government
saying this.
keeps killing
It's
them,
the same
Kevin.
people that just keep saying it that are keep being wrong. So I don't know.
It's kinda like the '80s and '90s, there were always all the prophets, kind of the Christian guys who are like, "Yep, this
Right.
is
The
gonna
end of the world
happen."
is coming.
Hagen and, there were a bunch of guys that back in
Yes.
the day that were like, "Yeah, it's gonna happen,
Hmm.
and
The
here are the
rapture.
clues, the Antichrist," and I already know I have insider knowledge,
Do you remember?
and it
Yeah,
keeps
and
the
there's
church
been
just
several times where
going.
they came up with like hard dates and like
Yeah,
time of day, and then they came and went, and they came up with another date, another. Like, dude, if you're wrong once, that's it, man.
yeah,
God doesn't use prophets that are wrong.
yeah, it's
If you
kinda in the
believe in
Bible that
that stuff,
they don't
yeah.
yeah, they don't get it wrong, so,
If you
who
get it
knows?
wrong once, and I
You're
think
not
you're
to
100%
confess.
right. Follow the
Yeah,
money. That's what all of that stuff is about.
yeah. Well, I like money. I mean,
Mhm.
if I could give you some insight, that would. But I can't sell it, right? If I don't believe something or at least question or ponder, like here, I tell you where I'm at, right? And but I can't sell it with a straight face. Like that's why I'm just like the bad salesman guy. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if you got money, this is cool, but
Right.
maybe you should just spend your money on getting out in the woods and having a good time. I
Right.
don't know. But and yet I still buy things, so I don't know what's right. Well, what's your take before I go down this next road? What's your take on aliens? What do you think they are? Do you think there's, or I guess there's UFOs and aliens?
Right. right.
So we
So
all know
obviously,
they're seeing things, right? There's
yeah,
lights and ships in the sky. What
obviously
do you
there are
think?
UFOs or UAPs. There's unidentified things in the air that
Yes.
I don't know that anybody really knows exactly what they are. Aliens, I mean, there's millions of stars and in billions of galaxies.
Mhm.
Is there, intelligent life somewhere? Yeah, probably. Is it here though? That's the big question. I don't know. But I'm not gonna, if I ever get abducted, I'll let everybody know. But a lot of people have been abducted and told everybody, and we're all like, they're crazy people,
Cra
And are they? Probably. They probably are crazy. There's probably a lot of crazy people out there that say and see a lot of crazy things, but
But that
it's hard to
actually goes
differentiate them.
right to my next theory. Now, I'll dig into what I believe here in a minute, but what you're saying actually fits my next theory is so in the Bible they have the rapture, right? You know about that?
Hmm.
Where they basically Jesus comes back for the saints, I guess is how you'd posture it. In the Bible, in Thessalonians, it says, "For the Lord Himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words." Now, the idea is what if the alien stuff they're trying to set up for if that happened and you had all the Christians disappear,
Right.
government's got to be like, you don't want
Aliens.
you gotta deal with you gotta get ahead of it.
Yeah, I feel like though, and that this is like a legitimate theory that is just as believable as everything else we've been talking about.
Exactly. That's the thing is and even if, right? Because I know some people get offended when you bring up, religion and Christianity and this and that. But even if that's not really gonna happen, there are people in power that believe it's gonna happen
Right.
and that they have to get ahead of it,
Hmm.
right?
Well,
They're not Christians, a lot of the people that are in power. But they feel like they need to have a cover story in case that happens, because they kinda go the other way on that.
right.
Like, there's good and there's bad, and so obviously people in government would be on the bad side.
But yeah, but if they're not Christians, why would they think the rapture is going to happen?
No, they believe the Bible, they just don't follow
Oh, like
Jesus.
devil
Yeah,
worshippers is what we're
devil
talking about.
yeah, now you're getting it. Because right, when you
Satanists.
think of politicians, do you not think devil
I
worshippers?
mean, if anyone's made a deal with the devil,
Well, be
like look
yeah.
at Congress, that's where they are. Look at the Senate.
In the Bible, do they not call Satan the father of lies?
Hmm.
When you
Right.
think of a politician, are you
There you go,
thinking
man.
that sounds like his children right
Yeah.
there, right?
Now, one of the since you bring this up, one of the other things that I've heard in like the message boards in the deep holes of the internet is
Yep.
that a lot of the people that are covering up these alien encounters
Yeah.
are hyper religious.
Oh,
Like super religious
that
Mormons
I have
and
heard that.
super
Yep.
religious Pentecostal Christians, evangelicals, and they are fully convinced that these aliens that are, contacting everybody are actually demons trying to
Yeah.
like trick. So
Yeah.
you don't want to interact with them. You know
No,
what
you
I mean? Like you
nope.
interacting with them in any way is like,
Well,
is
Hollywood
unchristian, and you got to
Hollywood
keep
always
protect people from them.
yeah. Hollywood always had the movies where you were getting, like, beamed up
Hmm.
and, the aliens were just, sucking you up through the thing. I seem to remember the Marvin the Martian kinda thing, and they
Hmm.
had a spaceship and it just sucked up,
Yep.
Bugs Bunny or whatever.
Sucking
It
up cows,
could
all that,
be
all sorts of
I
stuff.
tried to find the picture and I couldn't find it, so it could be one of those, what do they call it, where you remember something that didn't really happen, but
Hmm.
that's, the something effect, the guy Nelson Mandela effect there,
Hmm.
right? Where, so I don't know, but I think of, like, Independence Day, I mean, that was like a laser beam that kinda shot down at the
Shot down. They
people,
weren't sucking anybody up, but
picking anybody up. But
I
Hollywood
mean,
kind of that image in your mind of
right, there was
beams.
that movie Fire in the Sky that where he got
Yes.
sucked up in the beam, and that was a based on a true story according to the guy that was sucked up, so
Now, like, we could even go, like, one further. Now this is going to full on crazy town, and, hey, I'm there, right? I'm in crazy town. So, the Bible described, there was, um, actually in Ezekiel, they talked about the cherubim, the angels would, like, rise up and they moved, throughout, and they had they flew through the sky basically, and they had wings and rose from the ground with wheels that didn't leave their side, like a flying chariot, I guess is how people interpret it. And there's some crazy stuff out there. Now another thought, this is, work with me now. So if somebody was to say that they were demons and angels, because right, God created the universe, right, the heavens and the earth. I think the Hebrew word was like universe,
mhm,
is the same for that. And so God creates all this. So who's to say that these beings aren't the angels and demons and the angels that were cast out, right? I think that's where they're going with this.
mhm,
Now, remember early on in Genesis, they talked about the Nephilim
right,
and how they came into the daughters of man, right?
right,
You've heard that kind of story.
mhm,
And so they talk about that kind of thing. And when we hear UFO stories, remember, people are always like, yeah, I think they took my semen and I think they
right,
impregnate people. Is it not the same thing?
mhm.
Uh-huh. You
Yeah.
see? You
Well, I
see
mean,
where I'm
it's
going?
all through Greek history, right? Perseus and Hercules,
Yep.
they're all like kids of gods that were just like blowing the backs out of chicks in ancient Athens. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I don't know what's going on, but there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of stories. It's not like, it's not like, history is riddled with that sort of stuff of, chicks getting banged by gods and having like demigod babies. But to me, that's always just like weirdos that are
Yeah.
like super into like pervy stuff and just their minds get out of control and they just I'm gonna write this down. I gotta get this out.
I have a plan.
It's been
Yep.
happening. Yeah, it's been happening, for
But
millennia. But
I think, like, because a lot of the theories now seem to go with, they always say, oh well, they defy the laws of physics and they whatever. And a lot of the people kind of posture that they are interdimensional, right?
mhm,
Or that they're on another plane. And
right,
I think that's where you're starting to get a lot more of the angel demon kind of thing coming in.
right.
Because they're just like in a different plane, or, and I'm just
Right. And one of the
postulating that.
theories is that when a nuclear explosion happens,
Mhm.
it interacts with those alternate dimensions. And
Mm,
that's why they're trying to shut them down and keep them from going off and keeping tests from happening because it's causing damage in the alternate dimensions. Now, I'm too stupid to really understand the whole 5, 10 dimensions or whatever their string theory is saying there is, but um, what if string theory is just a bunch of bullshit? Because
oh,
they haven't come up with any
yeah,
answers. They
they
like
haven't figured
they're
it out.
the most brilliant people that have come out of any university in the last 20 years have been focusing on this string theory. And what if
Yeah,
it just doesn't lead to anything? Like, what did you come up with so far? Like, have you figured anything out? Because it just seems like a lot of math for no reason.
Kevin, math is fun.
What's the solution? What's the answer? You know?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's all kind of crazy out there, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I think it's as likely not, to use the words of the VA. It's as likely not that it's demons and angels as it is extraterrestrial beings.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean, you've got you know, alternate dimensional aliens, right? Like coming over. You've got maybe it's aliens from a different star that just like came over here, like what there's a million possibilities of what this could
There
be.
is.
And we've never even seen one of these things.
Well, and that's
You
I
know what I
think
mean?
what
One of
it
the beings is what I'm
right,
saying.
right. And that's kind of what it comes down to is so there are all these possibilities, but science completely is like, nope, nope, there's nothing here. I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
know what you're talking about. I'm not looking at it. It's all fantasy. That's not real. Those people are crazy. So we haven't even considered these ideas from a scientific or logical perspective. And even if people who are intelligent and, smarter than you and me are having ideas about this, they're afraid to come forward and say something
Right.
because they'll just be labeled as
Right, and
crazy,
I keep seeing physicists saying that, you know, these guys are saying they defy physics, but
You
what
must not
physics? What are we
understand
talking
physics then.
about?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
let us see what you've got, and then the physicists will decide if it's but they don't have any physicists on it, or at least that we know of. We don't know what the government's doing, and I guess like we just pay for it, and just you do whatever you want with our money, I guess.
Yeah. No, exactly. But I don't know. I think we got a lot here to digest,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, I
That's what I
know
could say. Like
one of the
I'm always afraid to do the alien one, but I feel like we dove a little deeper today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that you had mentioned you had kind of gone over as like earthquakes, causing earthquakes and finding like stuff, you know. But
Yeah.
people have said that some of these crafts that they have, if they have them, came from like archaeological digs. Like they've
Yes.
been there for
Yes.
thousands of years and they just dug them up.
Well, and there's the new stuff of everything coming. They're just living in the ocean.
Right. Right. That's
I
a
mean,
big one now.
there's a lot of things going on here that, it's possible. But I like that we think
Transmedium.
everything just comes from us.
Right.
Like, if it didn't come from Earth, it doesn't really count, like,
Right.
there might be aliens, but it's really more likely that it's just right here
Hmm.
because it's really about us.
Right. Well, I think there's a possibility that they've just been in the oceans forever,
Yes.
you know? Not coming from anywhere else at all. They've just been here and they're just another thing that we don't know about.
Oh, but definitely something to ponder. So that's what I got today. Kevin, I like it. So with that, you guys have questions, concerns, thoughts, things you want to hear about, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'd say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.